Released in 1977, just a few months after the arrest of David Berkowitz, aka the Son of Sam, the Talking Heads' Psycho Killer gave a glimpse inside the mind of a deranged serial killer. And the song has gone on to become one of the band's most popular. But what is the full story behind this song? Because as it turns out, it's quite a strange one. Was it really written about Berkowitz? If you love music history like I do, make sure to subscribe and join our pack. The Talking Heads had their birth in 1973 at the prestigious Rhode Island School of Design, when vocalist and guitarist David Byrne formed a band with drummer Chris Frantz. Now, originally they were known as the Artistics, and they would do local shows in the Providence area with transportation from their good friend Tina Weymouth, who was actually the girlfriend of Frantz at the time. In 1975, the three friends moved to New York and lived together in a loft. Weymouth was encouraged to learn the bass guitar so she could join the group. After endless hours of studying Suzi Quatro and 4 separate auditions, she was in the band. And the trio renamed themselves to the Talking Heads. They soon became part of the New York punk scene and played their first gig in June of 1975, opening for the Ramones at the legendary CBGB Club in the East Village. In late 1976, Byrne, Frantz, and Weymouth recorded a single titled Love Goes to Building on Fire. Though the sales were lackluster, its unique style and lyrics gave everyone a small glimpse of what the band was capable of, and what separated them from the pack. At a time when New York bands were either trying to be the Velvet Underground or the Ramones, the Talking Heads was sort of a mixture of both. Add in Byrne's keening voice, Weymouth's hard-charging bass, and Frantz's relentless drumming to produce a sound that sounded like no one else in the world. But before they headed back to the studio to record their first album, they needed a second guitarist and a keyboard player to fill out their band. They recruited Jerry Harrison, and once he learned they had a recording deal in place, Harrison, who played both guitar and keyboards, agreed to be brought on as the 4th member. And in the spring of 1977, the band headed to Sun Dragon Recording Studios to record their first album. It was co-produced by Lance Quinn and Tony Bon Jovi, the latter of whom was the cousin of New Jersey rocker John Bon Jovi. Despite having an awesome cousin, Bon Jovi was apparently a pain during the recording sessions, and the majority of the recorded material was done in his absence. It's not surprising then that Byrne was made uncomfortable by Bon Jovi's negativity. The lead singer suffers from Asperger's syndrome. By his own account, he credits his Asperger's with helping him create his musical persona. But it was also a bit of a roadblock when it came to dealing with people on a personal level. As Byrne himself put it, I couldn't talk to people face to face, so I got on stage and started screaming and squealing and twitching. Now, the first song that the band recorded would also go on to be their first song to hit the Billboard Top 100, peaking at number 92. It would also be their only song to be featured in Rock and Roll's Hall of Fame 500 Songs That Shaped Rock. But this iconic song had a very modest beginning, going all the way back to their college days when Byrne and Frantz were still in the Artistics. "I've got the beginnings of a song and I'd like you to help me with it." We said great. So David sat down and played the first verse and the chorus, and I immediately thought, oh, this is like the Velvet Underground meets Otis Redding. I loved it. I could just tell it was a great beginning for a song. And Alice Cooper was the unlikely inspiration behind the song. When I started writing this, I got help later, I imagined Alice Cooper doing a Randy Newman-type ballad. Both the Joker and Hannibal Lecter were much more fascinating than the good guys. Everybody sort of roots for the bad guys in movies. With this song though, Byrne wanted to take it to the next level. Instead of the listener simply being an observer, he wanted to take the listener inside the mind of a serial killer. Byrne adopts the persona of the serial killer, giving us a chilling look at the inner dialogue of the person committing these horrific crimes. Author Ian Gittins explains how the song came together one piece at a time. "I can't seem to face up to the facts, I'm tense and nervous and I can't relax" came from Byrne's own neuroses. While "You start a conversation, you can't even finish it" was a last-minute addition as the band were recording. So much so that the new lyrics didn't make it to the lyric sheet provided in Talking Heads 77. While the first verse and chorus came pretty easily, when it came to the bridge, Byrne got a bit stuck. He wanted something foreign and more subtle, illustrating the split personality of someone who could function in everyday society, but also carried a bloodthirsty lust that could only be satisfied by killing. Now, Byrne was friends with a Japanese student, and he asked her to help him with the translation, but after she realised the song was called Psycho Killer, she outright refused to help. Who knows, maybe if the song was called Fluffy Puppies, we'd have a bridge in Japanese. Frantz then suggested Tina Weymouth. Her mother was of French origin, and they only spoke French in the house. Tina agreed to do it, and just sat down and did it in a little over an hour. I wrote a couple of more verses, and within a few hours, Psycho Killer was more or less done. I mean, it evolved a little bit musically over the years, but this was an indication to me that this was a really good group of people to work with. When we played that song with our band The Artistics, people really liked it. Now, for the record, I'm sure you're wondering, the English translation for that bridge is as follows. What I did that night, what she said that night, realizing my hopes, I'm headed toward glory. And the line which ends each verse translates to, what is it? Or more commonly, what's that? Congratulations, you now speak French. From there, the rest of the album was soon completed, and after final editing and mixing, it was ready for release in December 1977. And their label, Sire Records, knew exactly which song to put out as the first single, despite the band's reluctance. Starting in July 1976, New York City had been besieged by a series of seemingly random shootings whose main targets were young women. For a full year, the city was terrorized by the so-called .44 caliber killer. In the year it took to catch him, there had been 8 separate attacks, claiming 6 lives and injuring 9. Ultimately identified by a parking ticket, which had been left on his car a short distance from where the last shooting took place, the police arrested David Berkowitz, a 24-year-old postal worker. Berkowitz said he was acting on the orders of a demon named Sam, who gave him instructions through his neighbor's black Labrador retriever. And with all the publicity surrounding Berkowitz's arrest, Sire Records saw this as a publicity opportunity. Even though it had begun to be written years earlier and had absolutely nothing to do with the Son of Sam killings, Psycho Killer was released late in 1977. And despite nearly 50 years of denials of a connection to Berkowitz's murderous rampage, the band has grown to accept the fact that despite some of their later songs having much more success, Psycho Killer had become their signature. And speaking of misinterpreted songs, did you know that millions of Americans, including Ronald Reagan, completely misunderstood the meaning behind Born in the USA by Bruce Springsteen? If you want the full story on that, click over there. Watch that video next.